Since being the #1 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, Joe Burrow has emerged as one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league. With his elite accuracy, his nice arm talent, his ability to extend plays behind the line of scrimmage, Burrow has proven he was worth the #1 overall pick just a few seasons ago. But as his career continues to unfold, we are now seeing a very troubling pattern emerge once again with a superstar quarterback in the NFL. Numerous injuries, a ton of sacks, a terrible offensive line. Does that sound familiar to you? It should, because Joe Burrow's career trajectory eerily mirrors a former quarterback named Andrew Luck. And amidst all the injuries and rehabilitation, the comparison you can make between these two start even before they entered the NFL. Burrow and Luck were both seen as fantastic prospects coming out of college. Andrew Luck was deemed as a generational player, having multiple good seasons at Stanford and making them a relevant program, while Burrow had maybe the best single season for any quarterback in college football history, passing for over 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns in his senior season. Both of these guys were seen as the no doubt about it #1 overall pick, and the expectations were fairly high for both of these players early on. And I would say that they both succeeded expectations early on. In the very first season of Luck's career, he led the Colts to an 11-5 record and also made the Pro Bowl, while Burrow only in his second season led the Bengals all the way to the Super Bowl for the first time in multiple decades. So it became pretty apparent early on that both of these guys were transcendent players, but also that this wasn't quite sustainable long term. Because as a rookie, Luck was sacked 41 times, which doesn't even take into account all the other hits that he took getting the ball out late. And on the flip side, Burrow was sacked 32 times in 10 games as a rookie and also suffered a torn ACL, MCL, and additional knee damage because he could not be protected. And while in his first year, Luck was fortunate despite taking all those hits to not be suffering a major injury, his injuries really just mounted up over time, and we didn't even see the first major injury for Luck until his 4th season in 2015. He would suffer a torn labrum in his throwing shoulder, torn cartilage in 2 ribs, partially torn abdominal muscle, and a lacerated kidney. It would force him to miss 9 games before returning in 2016 and playing every single game that season. But again in 2017, he hurt his shoulder again, was placed on injured reserve, and did not play a snap in 2017. He again came back in 2018, winning Comeback Player of the Year and making the Pro Bowl, but in 2019, it was the final straw for Luck. He suffered numerous calf and ankle injuries, and after playing in the preseason games, he announced his retirement on August 24th, citing physical and emotional toll of injuries as his primary reason. Luck made the tough decision to retire in the middle of his prime at age 29, and we have not seen him take the football field since. And after this past Sunday, in which Joe Burrow suffered another major injury, getting a grade 3 turf toe injury, I'm begging the Bengals organization to do something to protect Joe Burrow before he does end up being this generation's Andrew Luck. Because even worse so, what Luck had to deal with early in his career, it's really been one thing after another for Burrow, and he really can't catch a break. I mentioned his rookie season already, suffering that devastating knee injury because of the lack of the offensive line. He then came back in 2021, had a great season. He only dislocated his pinky finger that year, but missed no games because of it. In 2022, he had appendicitis, which required emergency surgery and him to miss most of training camp. That resulted in Burrow and the Bengals having a very slow start to the season, but the offensive line again was a massive issue. Burrow was sacked 51 times in that season, which is the most by far of his career so far. He came back in 2023. He started the first 10 games of the season, looked like a really good player once again, and then he suffered a torn ligament in his wrist, which required surgery and him to miss the rest of the season. He then came back in 2024, put up an MVP caliber year for the Bengals last year, leading the league in passing yards, leading the league in passing touchdowns. But that doesn't mean the offensive line was good. He was still sacked 48 times and was able to put up those numbers behind maybe the worst offensive line in the league. And now you go to this year and what happened this past Sunday, and he's going to be missing again, probably the rest of the season, expected to miss at least 3 months with this injury. And I know the Bengals started 2-0 and Jake Browning's a pretty good backup, but it's very hard to imagine the Bengals are competitive enough late in December for Burrow to rush back from this injury to try and get the Bengals into the playoffs and go on a run. It just does not seem like they're going to be in the position to do that, especially with their defense. And so in my fear, and what makes this situation pretty sad, is Joe Burrow is in the prime of his career. He's only 28 years old. He's coming off of the best season of his life in the National Football League. And it just sucks to continuously not be able to see him perform because of these injuries and have to see him battle back from these. Because at the end of the day, the NFL is a product. And when you have numerous star quarterbacks playing high-level football, it makes it more entertaining and fun to watch. And when you have a quarterback in the league at the caliber of Joe Burrow and he's missing numerous games every other year, it's so disappointing not only for the Bengals organization, but fans all across the league. And while I know know some people are going to push back that the offensive lines are not the sole reason for these injuries for Luck and Joe Burrow, and how both of them had a play style of holding the ball to the very last second, taking a huge hit to get the pass off, consistently putting their body on the line, running for first downs or extending the play. All of that can be true, but the fact that Joe Burrow has been sacked 201 times over 5 seasons is just ridiculous and should not be something that is happening for a franchise quarterback. I mean, the stats don't lie that Burrow has been sacked at a way higher rate than Andrew Luck was in his career, and it's not really surprising to me that he suffered more of these major injuries. In 6 years, Andrew Luck started 86 games in the regular season, and he was sacked 174 times, which with all of his dropbacks gives a 5.02 sack percentage. While Joe Burrow in his career has started 71 games in the regular season, has been sacked 201 times for a 7.22 sack percentage. That is insane, and why both of these guys have suffered numerous major injuries in their career, and why they actually have a very similar career trajectory as well. It's very simple for me. The Bengals have to pour more resources into their offensive line moving forward to protect their superstar franchise QB. While in the last few years they have tried to make some additions, a lot of them haven't really worked out that well. In 2021, they spent a second-round pick on Jackson Carman from Clemson, and he has turned out to be a bust. He's not even on the roster anymore. That same year, they signed Ted Karras to a 3-year, $18 million contract, and he's been a pretty serviceable player. I wouldn't call him one of the best centers in the league, but he's a decent option and has been a team captain for the team. In that same offseason, they signed Leo Collins to be his right tackle, and he was not a great addition. In 2022, they spent their 4th-round pick on Cordell Volson, who emerged as a pretty solid player, but is now in IR and has missed every game so far this season. They also paid $35 million to Alex Kappa, and that was not a great signing for the right guard position. You move to 2023, and they signed Orlando Brown Jr. to a 4-year, $64 million deal, and he really hasn't been that special either, guarding the blind side of Burrow. You go to 2024, and they spent their 1st-round pick on Amarius Mims, who was up and down as a rookie. And in this past year's draft, they again selected 2 guards, Dylan Fairchild in the 3rd round and Jalen Rivers in the 5th round. Fairchild is graded out as one of the worst guards in the league so far in the first 2 weeks. So while year after year they have tried to invest more into the offensive line, they need to double, triple down, continue to do it, and actually hit on these players because Burrow has to be protected moving forward. I also think part of this is on Joe Burrow because he needs to be smarter of not holding onto the football as long because he's proven that he just can't continue to take these hits. His body is just simply not built for it. There's just naturally some players in the NFL that are good at avoiding hits and going down in the pocket if they know the play is dead, and Burrow just simply never likes to give up on the play, and that's part of the reason he does continue to suffer these injuries. So 2 things can be true: that Burrow needs to do a better job of avoiding hits and knowing when to let the play die, and the Bengals organization needs to hit on a couple of offensive linemen to build a brick wall in front of them. I do also think that if this lack of protection continues, Burrow could do what a former Bengals quarterback did not too long ago in Carson Palmer. Basically quit on the organization and Mike Brown and say, trade me or I'm going to retire. I mentioned this theory a couple of months ago that if the next couple of years go south for the Bengals, why would Burrow want to continuously play behind a bad offensive line and not be winning? And we've already seen Burrow get testy with the Bengals organization, telling them publicly to pay T. Higgins and pay Trey Hendrickson. I just don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that if these things continue, that Burrow just says, get me out of here or I'm done. But let Andrew Luck's career be the example. If you do not provide the proper protection and focus on your franchise quarterback's health and avoiding hits, there's a great chance that Burrow's career could be cut short. And let's just hope and pray that history does not repeat itself. Below me in the comments section below, what do you think the Bengals organization should do moving forward to protect Joe Burrow and make sure he does not end up as Andrew Luck 2.0. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like in the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.